Good morning, Saluki family. I am Jacqueline Faulkner, and I have the tremendous opportunity to serve as your Vice President of Student Affairs. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Fall Convocation 2020 as we mark the official beginning of our new academic year. The past academic year began like many others before it. However, it ended like none that we have ever experienced. The impact of this global pandemic caused disruptions and fundamentally changed how we do business in higher education. In the face of adversity, you pivoted and persevered despite the challenges that you faced. What you were able to accomplish as Southwest faculty, staff, and students was nothing short of amazing. Higher education has arguably been one of the slowest industries to bring about change. However, you swiftly exhibited the agility, resilience, and excellence that we have come to know as the Southwest Way. For that, I simply want to say thank you. Convocation serves as a special opportunity for us to reflect upon our past, to assess where we are as a college, and to talk about our vision for the future. The rapid pace and challenges of our work over the past several years have been intense. We've taken on very difficult, complex, yet meaningful work, and we have achieved much success with innovation, resourcefulness, collaboration, but most importantly, integrity. However, we yet have work to do. And as we consider the far reaching consequences that COVID 19 will have on our world, there is no time like the present. It was 4 years ago in October, as we joined the Achieving the Dream Network, that our dynamic leader, Dr. Tracy D. Hall, challenged us to embrace her vision, which she coined as the big audacious goal to redesign, reinvent, and reset the entire institution with the student experience at the center of our work. Today, you will hear from Dr. Hall as she charts our path moving forward to now reimagine Southwest. Noted scholar William Pollard once said, learning and innovation go hand in hand. The arrogance of success is to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient for tomorrow. Again, we know that we have much work to do. Last year, we began a tradition for convocation of incorporating the student voice by having scholars share Where I Am From poems, which are a creative declaration about the things, experiences, and people that help to frame the scholars' lives. Many thanks to Professor Michael Rounds for identifying and working with our scholars in crafting poems. As we work to improve the student experience and to reimagine Southwest, it is imperative that we never lose sight of the student voice in our plans. We are honored today to have Southwest Dream Scholars with us to share poems. We will first hear from Zaria Lane, and we are working to assist two additional students who will share with us later. After a short video prelude, our scholars will share in that order. Zaria Lane.
I am from sizzling and well-oiled cast iron skillets, from cocoa butter sticks, blue magic, and incense filling the air. I am from the soothing space at the peak of the street and the endless green fields that descend behind it. Budding rutabaga behind the house and whimsical sprouting runners greeting my existence along every doorway. From weeping willows that grew a few streets down but too far from my little heart's desire. I am from black eyed peas on New Year's Eve stating you better miss my feet when you sweep, and a continuous line of wide, flat brown noses from Glenda and Larry White. I am from broken combs and bent brushes, huge Mickey Mouse cuffs, popped rubber bands, and heavily filled barrette buckets. I am from Grandma and Grandpa over yonder near Child's place. I am from one prayer before bed and one before you are fed. In other words, make sure you say your grace. I am from reminders that there ain't a lot of us, but there's a lot of love, and be kind because that's who you are. And apparently the place where no one believes the fat meat is greasy. Extended summer drives to West Helena, Arkansas with the family, competing to see who can scream the longest and loudest as we drive over our family's favorite bridge to cross the Mississippi River. I am from the woodwind section of Kirby Middle School's 2013 marching band, where my love of jazz was reinforced by the soothing tenor saxophone. I am from the white polo shirts gone beige in the backyard around 4:30 on weekdays and the same flowing stream with a name that changed every day, thanks to an imaginative trio of siblings with me as the loud and adventurous leader. I am from Loretta Lane, the woman who gave birth to me, a very talkative and emotional 10-pound, 11-ounce, big-headed baby born with 2 teeth and a back that was blue for the first 4 years of my life. I am from her tough and embracing love, her wisdom, her drive to rid me of my ignorance, and her reminders of how my ability to make life more complex than ever will never cease to amaze her. I am from the front porch chats with nearly every elder in Whitehaven, and smiling in excitement to meet parents while becoming a friend to many families, crocheting till my pointer fingers went numb, journaling until I am understood by none other than myself, and a lifetime filled with the nickname Grandma for my habits and style of dress. I am from Zaria, you'll understand when you're older. From youthful insecurity disguised as introvertedness and extrovertedness revealed by Asian confidence in my mother's spirit amongst me. But most importantly, I am from resilience. I am from optimism beyond pain and ache, and a continuous sense of security in knowing that any happiness belonging to me has to begin with me, or it's for anybody to take. And that is where I am from. Thank you.
We will now hear from another scholar, Mr. Montreal Polk.
Greetings. I am Montreal Polk. I am from Bear Pillows, from blankets as sheets and quilts to cover. I am from a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 siblings, affordable but cramped. It felt like a crowded playground. I'm from the weeds in the shared backyard, the potholes that form pools if it rained too much the day before. I'm from the parking lot football on Thanksgiving Day, from obnoxious but humorous laughter. I am from Monica and Derek, from the headbutting and name calling, where we didn't apologize, but asked, did you want to play a game? I am from an area where people tell me, you think you're better than everybody, not knowing I used to stay in a hotel. I'm from the church cutting our Sundays short to there has to be more than what we're taught. I'm from South Memphis, Foot Homes, while all I know is my immediate family and neighbors who somehow became our aunts and cousins. I am from a place of love where my mom's most trusted became my babysitter during her night shifts. Now I'm a 3rd-year student with mentors by my side providing help, motivation, and encouragement when needed. I am from the being self-centered but considerate, cocky but humble. I am from a place where I was given a second chance to receive my degree in English. After transitioning from my previous school to Southwest, I will not only achieve that goal, but set the foundation for future ones while helping others. I chose Southwest, and you can too. I am a dream scholar. I am a distinct scholar. Thank you.
Excellent. I know that you all join me in applauding these amazing students who have persevered through much to be here and are yet committed to their goals of college completion. You all make me so proud. We have one additional scholar that we hope will join us and share with you shortly. Now it is my pleasure to present to you my new colleague, who it is hard to believe has only been with us for a few short months because he's led with courage and passion throughout this pandemic, as though he has been in this role for many years. Dr. Kendricks Hooker will now share some academic updates.
Good morning, VP Faulkner, and thanks for the warm welcome and introduction. Students, thank you for telling your story and expressing your voices. Good morning, Southwest, especially to the faculty that are returning from their summer break. For many, as VP Faulkner indicated, this may be your first time meeting me, albeit virtually. I want you to know that I am honored to have the opportunity to serve as your Vice President of Academic Affairs. I look forward to meeting and working with each of you in person, hopefully sooner rather than later. Regardless, my excitement for this academic year still remains at an all-time high, and I would like to welcome each of you back. I truly hope you had a great summer and are returning with a refreshed and rejuvenated outlook for an extraordinary academic year that we will all experience together for the very first time. So let me say thank you in advance. Thank you for going above and beyond to support our students and each other. I would also like to take a brief moment to acknowledge everyone involved in developing our Back to Campus plan. Academic Affairs and Student Affairs collaborated with the Financial and Administrative Services team and successfully developed a plan that primarily focused on health and safety of everyone on campus, students, staff, and faculty alike. Our comprehensive plan requires each person to take an online pre-health assessment prior to coming to campus, having your temperature taken upon arriving to campus, and wearing PPE the entire duration that you're on campus. Thank you to everyone that was involved. And now, before sharing a few updates, I would like for everyone to pause momentarily and reflect on 2020 thus far. If you could sum up the past 8 months, 8 or 9 months, with one word, what would that word be? I can only imagine the words that probably came to mind, but for me, it's change. Think about it. Sometimes change can be challenging even on a good day. Now mix in a deadly pandemic, new instructional modalities for many, the start of a new academic year. This is certainly a recipe for change, not only for today, but for many unforeseeable days, months, and weeks to follow. To say the least, the coronavirus pandemic has most assuredly added significant change to the many challenges that we typically experience at the start of any new academic year. But I have no doubt that we will persevere. Oftentimes, it is so much easier to choose comfort over change because it's our human nature, and I get it. However, now more than ever, we have to disconnect from our comfort zones and charge forward to embrace a new reality that will allow new opportunities for growth and innovation at Southwest. Recently, I shared in an interview that change, in my opinion, occurs for two reasons: because it is necessary or innovative. COVID-19 definitely has forced the necessary, regardless of our level of readiness. But it has also given us the unique opportunity to reimagine Southwest, opening the door for more creativity and the opportunity to be more innovative. As Vice President of Academic Affairs, one of my many obligations is to effectively transform dilemmas into decisions, pushing our agenda forward. I think that you would all agree that we have certainly been faced with a dilemma this year. Through a collaborative approach, your leadership team is constantly working to plan for the known and many unknowns. And in doing so, we will be reviewing our systems, processes, policies, and committees to ensure responsiveness and flexibility. These steps will allow us and to develop our academic strategic plan in organizing and clarifying our academic direction. It's important for Southwest to offer courses and programs that meet the needs of our community, that enable our students to reach their academic goals and ultimately obtain gainful employment. Our students must gain experiences reflective of what's currently available in industry and business. As you may be aware, we have already taken steps in this direction with our return to industry externships for faculty. This summer, we had 3 faculty members participate in this externship. This externship speaks to our ability to be innovative in meeting the needs of our community and industry. Given our new normal or abnormal, we have to truly think outside of the box and look for new ways to meet the needs of students and our communities. With that, now I would like to share a few updates on course delivery, online training certification, the academic calendar, student laptops, library, and what's next for Southwest. In fall 2019, 19.4% of our courses were online or hybrid, and nearly 81% of our courses were on ground. For fall 2020, and I think we probably need a drum roll here, 89% of our courses are online or hybrid, with nearly 11 being on ground in some capacity. Faculty, I think this is a moment to thank you for your efforts in shifting how we teach our students and completing your online training certification. By the end of this week, all 100% of our faculty would have completed their online training certification. If there was an opportunity to give a round of applause, I would certainly do that. With all faculty completing the online training certification, we will be able to touch lives regardless of where students are. And in doing so, we wanted to create an academic calendar that offered more flexibility to our students. With a primary focus on health and safety, most of our courses have been shifted to online to reduce the amount of traffic on campus. We will have a full term that consists of a 15-week schedule for the fall and spring that offers only online classes. We will also have a 13-week and 2 6-week flex terms that will offer hybrid courses that are either online with teams or online with our CTE courses. We will also have 4 and 3-week winter sessions with online courses only. And I would also add that Shelby County Schools dual enrollment have their own unique part of term, which begins September 8th. With the different types of instructional modalities, various time frames, and a schedule for the entire academic year, our students are able to fit Southwest into their lives anywhere and anytime. With all of the courses being online in some capacity, we needed to address the digital divide. As a result, many of our students will be equipped to operate virtually, as we have purchased 3,500 laptops that are being distributed to students this week. We are distributing the laptops this week from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. On Monday, it was at Whitehaven. Yesterday, it was at Maxine Smith. Today, we're at Macon Cove. Tomorrow, Union Allied Health. And on Friday, we will be at the Macon campus. After Friday, Macon will be the location for the distribution. In addition, by the end of the next week, our Wi-Fi or wireless capabilities will extend into the parking lots at the Macon campus, the Union campus, Whitehaven, Maxine Smith, and Gill. I will also add that the library will continue to support as well. While the physical locations are closed, our librarians will continue to support remotely. The librarians can be reached for support via the library website. Digital resources will still be available to students, And also students and faculty can get a free Grammarly account as well. Students will also be able to make reservations for curbside checkout at the Macon and Union campuses through the library webpage to check out circulating materials on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. During this academic year, in addition to developing our academic strategic plan, we will also submit our SACS COC fifth year report. And as of last week, our learning management system is likely to change from D2L to Blackboard. As evident with these changes, this will be an exceptionally demanding and challenging year, but one that I know we are ready for, and one that will continue to drive Southwest to the next level of being the premier institution for technical, career, and transfer education. During my short time here, and on a few occasions, I've heard President Hall say that we have community in our name. Therefore, we must be this community's college. With that title, or should I say that honor, we accept 100% of the students that have an interest in us. We are truly comfortable with that because we know that we have faculty that we deem to be the best at teaching our students regardless of their level of preparedness. One of my favorite quotes by Johann Wolfgang reads, "If you look at a man for what he was, he will only get worse. Look at a man for what he could be, he will become what he should be." If we engage our students in this way, I wholeheartedly believe they will grow and reach their full potential. The mere fact that our students have shown up at our doorsteps, whether that's in person or remotely, our students trust that we will do just that, believe in their potential. Everything that we do is and should be about student success and transforming their lives to meet their dreams.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hooker. And let me start with a welcome to everyone as well. Welcome to Fall 2020 Convocation. I too certainly want to say thank you all who worked on the Back to Campus plan for Phase 1 and now for Phase 2, collaborative effort between the Finance and Administration Organization, our friends in Student Affairs, and our friends in Academic Affairs. Tremendous amount of success. I appreciate everything you've done and look forward to us continuing to execute on this as we come back to the fall. I'm going to touch on a couple areas today. It's going to be primarily with respect to the budget and kind of give you a little context as to where we are as an organization and what's going on kind of in a broader sense in the broader economy. So with respect to our budget here at the college, unrestricted budget, you can see that our expenses from FY16 to FY20 went from 55 million to 67 million. And that was purposely done. Over that time, enrollment was growing, so revenue was growing, and so we invested in several different areas. Many of you who've been here have seen that we've had cost of living adjustments for the last several years. Last year, we made a concerted effort to address equity pay with respect to our faculty. We've adjusted pay for our adjuncts, which was long overdue for 2 years in a row, for about 2 decades plus, where there were no adjustments at all to the adjunct pay, so we made some adjustments there. We created a living wage back in 2017 and have bumped it up a couple of times for our employees who were below a living wage that we thought was fair for some of our employees. We've had a bonus for 2 of the last 3 years, and then we put in a professional development plan and expended dollars for that officially with a new structure starting in FY18. On top of those investments in our people, we made investments in technology in a number of different areas across the college. And also we've added new equipment and new academic programs. As Dr. Hooker talked about, those new academic programs, that is a great source of opportunity and growth for us at the college, and we invested in those. The most prominent example of that being what we've done with funeral services. So we've invested in the organization, we've invested in our people, we've invested physically as well, and then talk about that. We've also invested in our physical infrastructure, but certainly making the right type of investments in the college. And that's where our dollars have gone and where they should go for us as a higher education institution. Next slide, please. So with that, you'll see that we are seeing some challenges in a more macro sense, and Southwest being a part of the broader overall economic activity and certainly being a higher educational institution are seeing some of these challenges. The first one is community colleges just across the board are under pressure. Many of you who have worked in the community colleges for some time, you may be aware that from time to time, when there's an economic slowdown, students come back to school, and so community colleges see enrollment improve. And that's worked in the past. This time it's different. We're seeing a different outcome. It's because we're dealing with a pandemic, and there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainty. And so what once was growth is now turning into downward pressure. And in particularly downward pressure associated with institutions that have large minority enrollments. And if you're not aware, Southwest Tennessee Community College is classified technically by the Department of Education as a predominantly Black institution, a PBI. And so we have a large minority enrollment. And so institutions like Southwest across the country are seeing downward pressure on enrollment because of things associated with COVID-19. So that's one of the major things that we're watching and looking at as an institution, some of the trends we're seeing in terms of pressure on enrollment for large institutions like ours in major urban areas with large minority populations. Additionally, the broader economic outlook is certainly uncertain. Unemployment has improved, but still well above 10%. And that is uncharacteristically high only in times like this with COVID-19, when we say that it's improving, but it's very high at where it stands. As well as, if you work in or had friends or family that work in retail or restaurants, there are many areas where the amount of economic activity that once existed is materially less than it was once before, primarily because we're all, working from home and not out and about as much, and you can't put large groups together. So it puts downward pressure on overall economic output and economic activity. So that's certainly something that continues and will likely to continue for the foreseeable future. With that happens, tax revenues come under pressure. Tennessee is a great example of that. We are a state that depends heavily on sales tax. That's the only form of tax revenue that's generated in the main for the state of Tennessee. There's no income tax. And as you know, in Memphis, we have Beale Street, so there's a lot of tourism with street sales taxes. And then in Nashville, with country music, that's a lot of tourism as well. And so when you don't have as much activity occurring and people traveling from around the globe and even within the United States to areas where you have a lot of tourism, then that's going to be less tax revenue for the state to bring in. For institutions of higher learning, that's important because that tax revenue is what funds state appropriations for each organization. And so for us, that's something that we have to keep an eye on as well, is that, that is a circle, and we're a part of that circle as being a higher education institution. And the last thing that we're seeing in terms of some of the challenges associated with tuition and fees, as you can imagine, in this environment, this would not be an environment where you would go and raise prices on students with everything I just outlined above going on. So TBR, our governing body, instituted this year a flat tuition and fee, which means that we kept prices at the same level. And actually, we took one of our fees down by half year over year. And so that trend we see clearly across the state of Tennessee with our sister institutions as a part of TBR, but it's also something you see now across the board nationally as well. So these are some of the trends that we're seeing. And because of those trends, we have to be a little more creative and come up with solutions. And so that's what I want to touch on the next slide. Next slide, please. So as we think of creative solutions, some things that we have to consider is, our ability to effectively manage those impacts that we have not seen since the Great Recession. The Great Recession back 10, 11 years ago was significantly economic impact to the country. COVID-19 is that on steroids. And so there has to be alignment with the amount of change that's occurring globally and what's the changes that's happening at each individual organization. And for us here at Southwest Tennessee Community College, aligning to that change that we're seeing, some of those things I talked about earlier, is important for us as an institution. And there are some things that we can do to kind of, as you go through so much uncertainty and look for different ways to react to it, some of the things you can do is diversify the revenue stream. For us as a college, the vast majority of our revenue comes from two sources: tuition and fees and state appropriation. Our ability to diversify the revenue stream is something that's a great lever for us as an institution. And for those of you who are close enough to me, know that's something I've always talked about. Dr. Hall certainly has talked about it as well, that, you know, the ability for us to find new revenue and be creative in that, that's a great opportunity for us as a college. Creating new academic programs. I think the best example of that for us at Southwest is the funeral services program. That's an excellent program. It's performed very, very well. Dr. Hooker and I traded a couple of texts a couple of weeks back. We had to put a report together for THEC, and it's just performed extraordinarily well, exceeded all of our expectations in terms of enrollment in that program, revenue that it created, and that's a shining example of what we can do, creating more new academic programs like that, working collectively and leveraging the resources and the talent that we have here at the college. And the last thing I think, you know, for us, as you go through change, being strategic and preparing for the long term. The changes, the challenges that we're seeing are going to be here for the foreseeable future. And thinking about where we're going and making adjustments and preparing for the long term, I think is an ideal approach for us to take and be strategic how we handle the challenges that exist for us right now. And with that being said, that wraps up my portion. I'm going to turn it over to our president and let her take it from here, Dr. Tracy Hall.
And prior to Dr. Hall coming up to talk about Reimagine Southwest, we're fortunate that our last student has now joined us, Andrea Carey, and we are excited to be able to hear her I Am poem. Andrea, you have the microphone.
Okay, thank you. Greetings. My name is Andrea Carey. Where I am from. I am from where the Mississippi runs deep. I am from mud pies in the backyard, gritty and grimy, such a unique treat. I am from honeysuckle, the honeysuckle plant that grows along the street, yellow and white, such a sweet delight. I am from Mary Ann Durden and Jeanette Durden. I am from salmon, croquette, and good old Delta cane molasses. I am from looking for love in all the wrong places. I am from foster homes. And I can't wait until I'm grown. I am from losing my mother at the age of 9 due to cancer and radiation. I am from trying to fit in, going to the clubs at the age of 12 with the fake ID, trying to fit in, not knowing that I was made to stand out. I am from wanting my father to come get me from foster care. I am from him telling me no. I am from a Sunday school where the word of God is shared. I am from raising 2 great, strong young men, talented. I am from where they love their mama and I love them more. I am from 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. All things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. I am from humbleness, humility, and repentance. I would like to now take a minute to ask Professor Rounds to forgive me for any time that I rendered disrespect or wasn't willing to submit and receive his instructions. I am from Southwest Tennessee Community College, which is my best choice. Can anyone great come from Southwest Tennessee Community College? All things great come from Southwest Tennessee Community College. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Miss Carrie, thank you so much for your heartfelt comments. And I do agree with you. All good things come from Southwest Tennessee Community College. And we're looking at one of those good things right now on this screen. So could we give everyone, even though I can't see you, can we give a collective round of applause for Miss Carrie and for all of our students today and their I am poems? You did a fantastic job. And our other two students, Zaria and Montreal, I believe I'm saying the name right. Thank you so much for being with us today. And it's at the last minute and we've contacted you, but you came through in a winning fashion and we so appreciate you. And look at you, Miss Carrie, you all decked out in your finest. You got your Sunday best on. You looking good. You quoting scriptures and all too. So that you did a fantastic job. All of you did. So thank you so much. You're welcome to stay with us the rest of the meeting, but I have a feeling that you probably won't want to do that. But you're welcome to do so if you like to. But if you have other things that you like to do, we would like to say thank you and have a great rest of the day. We saw, I think that was one of your children in the background helping you. I understand. I understand. Thank you again. Thank you. Ms. Zaria, our other student, if you all are wanting to leave now, you sure can. But again, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Faculty and staff, how are you? I'm listening. I'm trying to hear you. Listen, I miss you all. I can't see anybody. I can't hear anybody. And as a public speaking teacher, and I say this all the time, I don't care if you all don't think I'm a teacher. In my heart, that is who I am. I have to see people and I have to hear people, and I can't see you or hear you. And so this is difficult. It is a new normal, and some things I've adjusted to, and I've just gotten fine with it. But that's speaking before a audience that I can't see or hear. I don't know that I will ever get totally used to not having any feedback at all. I'd at least like to see some chatting or something going on, but I'm just going to have to feel it in my spirit that you all are here. And some of you have texted me when I asked earlier, can you hear me? I got a few people sending a text, and I appreciate that. That helps me to know that there are folks out there. And so I know we have a Q&A section of this live stream, and it's not the same as the chat. But if I can just get a few folks just to say, hey, wave or something, so that I can know that there are other folks out there in the atmosphere somewhere that I can see. But if I don't hear from you, then I know that I hope that you are at least here, and I hope that you all are staying safe in your homes, and when you do have to go out, you are remaining safe. We are certainly in a new normal. We certainly could not have imagined we would be in this situation just a few short months ago. It just really feels like it's been years, but it hasn't been years. We've just all had to adjust and adapt, and there have been a lot of things that we've just not quite figured out. We've had a few technical glitches this morning, and I'd like to say you're probably going to see through this, but it was all planned. It was planned. It was just so that you could see that we too are struggling somewhat sometimes with the technology, but we're getting it. We're getting it together. We're all adapting to our new normal. I'd like to begin with kind of giving you what I tend to like to do at the beginning of the year is to give you an overview of where we are and where we've been. And some of you, when we had a leadership retreat, I talked about a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, and I'm going to add a few things, but I like for you all to, because we have so many people that are new and they don't know kind of where we are and where we're going, and we have to, as much as possible, be on the same page. And so that's what I'll do today. I'll give you just a really brief overview of, at least under my tenure since 2015, kind of where we are and where from whence we've come, and then talk about where we're headed, not only with the new normal, but what that new normal has, how it has impacted the college. And typically in our convocation, I like to make sure we have an upbeat message, because I always just really enjoy convocation. It's a welcoming back of faculty from being gone for over the summer, those that don't teach, and for staff, to all of us to be together. So I enjoy convocation and seeing everyone after a few months of being away. And this time we tried to interject as much positivity as possible, as you know, when we talk about our students and starting from our students and where they are and who they are, and keeping them always at the focus, because that's why we are here. That's the mission of the college, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But in addition to the welcoming back and the beginning and the freshness of a new semester, and I always say Happy New Year. I say that each fall, and I say that again, Happy New Year. But it takes on a new meaning this year when for some of us, we may say, how can we be happy this new year? And I always try to find the positive in everything, even when it's sometimes challenging. But one of the positives is that we are here to be able to, even though we're not seeing each other in person, we are here and we are present. And so for that, I am appreciative of the fact that, I mean, that's something to be happy about. I'm happy that the college is still standing. We have some challenges, and I'm going to talk to you about that today. And I hopefully over the 5 years that I've been here, can you believe that it's been 5 years already? And well, it has been, and but over the 5 years, we've done a lot of great things, and I think over the 5 years, you hopefully have come to expect that I will be honest, and I will be as transparent as possible. Some things are confidential, of course, but as much as I can share with you, I will, and I will be candid. And I don't mind tough questions, as long as you can accept and take the tough answers and the tough responses. And so I'm going to continue in that tradition today. So without further ado, let's get started with the presentation. I have a few minutes. We're running behind on our schedule. So I'm going to try to move through as quickly as possible so that we can kind of keep as close to our schedule as possible. And so let me begin. Reimagining Southwest, and you've heard us talk about reimagining Southwest, and actually, if you're listening and paying attention to the news or commercials or business and industry, everybody has become enamored with that word reimagine. We're all reimagining, and I think there's a reason for that, because we all have no clue about what a pandemic is like. We have to reimagine how we're living our lives. Can you imagine just a few short months ago, knowing that you had to walk out of the house and put a mask on Sometimes when I leave out of the house, I don't even recognize this world. I'm in stores and people are in masks. And as a person that really feeds off of people and their communication and nonverbals, you can't see anybody's mouth. Their face is all covered up to their eyes, and sometimes they even have on shades. So I don't even know if people are happy or sad. Or what, or upset. I don't know, and you don't either, because everybody's face is covered. And so that has changed who we are and how we live. And so we're all trying to reimagine it. And really, there's no one around to give us guidance on that. The last pandemic, the people that were here, most of them are not here and able to say, okay, this is what you do. There is no playbook for how to live our lives and conduct business in a pandemic. It's different. It is an invisible foe. So when we have things that are in front of us and we know that it's an enemy, we can make some plans and we know how it's going to respond because we can see it moving. With the virus, we can't see a thing. And so that is difficult to make plans and even to move forward, but we have to. And so that's where we come to this term that we've all seen to embrace, reimagine. And so reimagining Southwest, from what to why to what next. So I'm going to go briefly through the what to why to what next, and then in our conversation as we transition to the town hall portion of the convocation. And that's where I will hear from you. And to hear your questions, and I am asking, you will see that I will ask for your input and your feedback as we tackle some challenges ahead that VP Neal previewed and alluded to in his comments. So just a brief overview, just again, our student experience redesign work 2015 to 2019, the what, our why, our what next, which is where we are, the Reimagine Southwest, and the what next, the COVID-19's impact on Southwest. But then finally, the mission, because the mission remains the same, and we have to keep that in mind. When everything is going on around us and it's very chaotic, we always have to stay focused and keep our eye on the prize. That can be difficult, I understand, but as leaders, as educators, that's what we have to do. Next slide, please. So the what? Redesign, reinvent, reset the student experience. Some of you have been at the college much longer than 2015, but when I arrived in 2015, I was armed with a Huron report that talked about some of the challenges that the college had faced. Huron was a consulting firm that the college had employed and contracted with prior to my arrival. So I had this playbook. I had this pretty much a handbook as to here's some challenges that the college had been facing. And so prominently displayed in those documents were the issues in student affairs from external and internal constituents had been surveyed. And they all seemed to agree that we needed to focus on the student experience and student affairs. And so that's where I began with looking at how we are treating our students, quite frankly, and what their experiences are. And so we focused on increasing enrollment and retention, and we focused on improving processes and procedures, and we focused on how we do what we do. What are we doing? And so from recruitment all the way to completion, we focused on our students. You have to fix the process. It's easy to say we need better students. Everyone's saying that. I think you look at any company and they'll say, if we only had better whatever, better customers, better employees, we could do things differently, but we don't get to choose. Our students, we are put here for a reason. We are in West Tennessee to serve this population, and our population is our population. And so that's what we have to focus on. And there's so many things beyond our control, but there are those things that we could fix, and that's what we focused on. We then began, after the first 2 years, we joined Achieving the Dream. So this whole National Education Reform Network, and that was our framework to look at improving all these processes. The third and fourth year of years of achieving the dream, we started to hone in and focus on equity and teaching and learning. We had some quick wins, but when you have the quick wins like an increase in enrollment or increase in retention or increase in completion, those are the quick wins. But the work becomes more difficult then because you really have to dig deeper to see what we need to do, and not only what do we need to do, the why. And so that's what we did. We moved from the what, the fixing of processes and procedures, to our why, because sometimes you get frustrated. You've done all this work and then it's like, for what? So that's why we had to focus on our why. Next slide, please. So our why, that's increasing social and economic mobility. That's why we do what we do. A college degree or credential is supposed to increase economic mobility. That's what it's supposed to do. But we know that zip codes matter, and we start to really look at that. Zip codes do matter. That poor kids, and this was an article that we looked at and we discussed last year, poor kids who do everything right don't do better than rich kids who do everything wrong because they lack the safety nets. Unfortunately, for many kids, how they are born and where they are born will dictate how they live their lives and their potential for social and economic mobility. It doesn't have to be the be all and the end all, but when we look at the fact that kids without those social safety nets. So if you have a parent with a college degree, they have a leg up. They can assist you. But if you're first generation, you're navigating this world alone. You don't know what financial aid, and you don't know all of these different acronyms that we discuss in higher ed because you've never heard that before. Or if you get in trouble with the law and your mother or your father has no connection, you're just going to jail. That's what's getting ready to happen to you. But if your mom or dad knows someone and they can get you the hookup, then you might be able to slide a little bit because you had a safety net that ripped you from what your future could be because they had connections. Well, many of us, present company included, have no contacts or connections. And so if I did something wrong, I have a jumpsuit on and someone else has still their three-piece suit on. And so we can't forget the fact that there are people that have been born with advantages. And so when we talk about you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, that assumes that everyone possesses boots. They do not. And so we know that systemic barriers, you're moving a little bit ahead of me, Daphne, I appreciate it. I like a mover and a shaker, but let's go back a little bit. Systemic barriers and racial injustices prevent a leveling of the playing field. The playing fields are not level. They're not. And so if we say that they are not. And so for the very reasons that I just said, now you may proceed, Daphne. And so we know that. And we know that there are systemic barriers, and we've known that all along, even if we don't want to admit it or we don't want to say it out loud. It is the fact. It is a fact that systemic barriers and injustice exist. 2020 magnified those barriers and injustices. And so if there were people that said there are no disparities in the healthcare system, all they need to do is to take a look at this global pandemic. And you see what populations are more impacted negatively by COVID. And so we talk about that from a healthcare system, what needs to happen to make sure that everyone has access to a quality healthcare and that they are not impacted by something that for some people with health insurance or that have had quality health care or access to health care, they are surviving where others may not be. And so we can talk about the healthcare system and the global pandemic and how healthcare needs to change because it has created where there are the haves and the have-nots and the barriers and injustices. We also, if a pandemic were not enough, we also had what occurred in May 2020 with George Floyd and the subsequent Black Lives Matter protests. I'm talking about peaceful protesters, folks. And so we're not going to get distracted, and at least I'm not, with the violence that is unnecessary. As a woman from the Ferguson area, I know the damage that it can do long term to a community when people start tearing up buildings, and restaurants can't operate. One of my favorite restaurants in Ferguson, Kathy's Kitchen, Black-owned business, wonderful family. They've done a lot of great things in the community, and just were almost devastated by the Ferguson riots. And so I am not in favor of riots, not the same as protests. And so the subsequent protests that called attention to what we already know, and some people didn't know because it hasn't been your experience, that there are changes that need to occur with police relations and minority communities, and that there are changes that need to occur in the criminal justice system. Again, these may not have been your experiences and you may not agree with them, and that's okay because it hasn't been your life, but it does not mean that it is not the experiences for others. And so we can look at those two areas and say healthcare needs to do something differently, and police and criminal justice system, they need to change. And so I would not disagree with that, but I would say, just as we did in 2015, we need to look at what we can control, and maybe there are some things that we need to clean up as well. And so not that we don't look at the healthcare system, and not that we don't look at police and criminal justice system, but I submit to you today that the higher education system also needs to do some work as well. And so what can we do to make sure that we are not creating or being complicit in the barriers to keep people from moving from one level of economics to another, social and economic status? Next slide. Next slide. So what next? Reimagine Southwest. And so when the situation occurred with George Floyd, my VPs and I crafted a letter that we submitted to the campus to make a statement about our thoughts about Southwest and our role and what we can do. It really is time out for all this talking. Nothing wrong with talking, but a lot of things we know what to do. We just need to do them. And I said, I gave this presentation during a leadership retreat, and I talked about my feelings about meetings. Meetings are useful if you do something after the meeting. But just to say you had a whole bunch of meetings, not impressive to me. So you know how people are, they like to say, I had meetings all day. And it's like, you probably didn't do anything all day either, just sit and listen. But we have to stop just talking, we have to do. And so that's what the what next in the whole Reimagine Southwest. It's accelerating our equity work. We started the work on equity and looking at teaching and learning and how our Black students are not doing as well as they should be doing when you compare them to our white students. And that's a problem. We are a predominantly Black institution. So if the majority of our students who are Black aren't doing well, then the college is not doing well. And so the goals of Reimagine Southwest include actively closing the digital divide, impacting our students, blurring the lines between the college and business and industry to better prepare our students for the workforce. And you've heard a little bit about those today with the providing students with the laptop, and Dr. Hooker talked about our faculty externship partnership, which sends faculty into business and industry to kind of close that gap. Third, removing institutional and policy barriers that prevent students from reaching their goals. Those are the things that you will hear more about this year as we look at what have we always done that we don't need to do anymore. A lot of times we make these policies and we say, well, the policy says we need to do it, but if the policy doesn't make sense, why are we doing it? I just don't know, just asking for a friend. And so we need to look at removing those institutional and policy barriers that prevent students from reaching their goals. Participate in courageously uncomfortable conversations about things such as social justice issues impacting our world. I think there are a lot of things that go on and we just kind of tiptoe nicely around them for fear that we may offend people, and we might. But in higher ed, We have these conversations. That's what we are supposed to do. That's how we get to breakthroughs and finding out how we can do things better. And if we're going to be together as a community of educators, we also are a community of learners, and that's how we learn, is that we talk to each other and participate in these conversations. So I'm looking forward to that in this upcoming year. Increasing social and economic mobility. This is difficult, especially when we're talking about Memphis, that has a historic tradition, unfortunately, of generational poverty. How do we increase social and economic mobility? We cannot do it alone. I serve on a board, and this was a conversation that we had. They had set a goal of increasing or decreasing poverty by 10% in a particular area. And one of my questions was, how are you going to do that? How are we going to figure out how to do that when the city hasn't figured out how to do that? And so individually, we cannot do this alone, but collectively, we can do great things. And so we're going to talk about how we can increase social and economic mobility, how we can help to contribute to the decrease in poverty, but it can't just be on the back of Southwest. It has to be in partnership, but we're starting by looking at how we can provide quality and continue to provide quality education, and making sure that students, when they leave Southwest, as the young lady said, all good things come from Southwest, and that is true, and we need to make sure that that is. And so that means that when students leave our campuses, they write well. I'm going to let that marinate for a minute. You get me? They write well. I see some students, they'll send an email to me complaining, and they have a valid complaint, but I can't get past the spelling, the grammatical errors. Folks, we can't have graduates leaving writing in some of the ways that I've seen. That's not all of our students, but it's the truth that I've seen in my experience. And so what does that mean if a person is not able to communicate well orally or written, in a written manner? What does that do for them and their chances of getting a job that pays a living wage? What does that mean for them as they're trying to move up the economic ladder? What does that mean for them? So simply passing people is not good. And that's not what we're talking about. And so we have to really be clear when we talk about student success. We're not just talking about everybody gets an A. We're not Oprah. You get A, you get A, you get A. No, we're talking about you have to leave here prepared for that next level. The students that graduate from Southwest they represent us. And so think about that. When they go into the workforce, when they go to the next level, their junior year at whatever university they choose, they represent us. They represent our teaching. They represent our student affairs. They represent us. We want them to represent us well. So let's keep that in mind. And then the last one, and this is where we will talk about kind of COVID, and then it will also move into the town hall portion of our conversation. Becoming more efficient, effective, innovative, and entrepreneurial in our work. That is critical, that we think differently about how we do what we do and what we have at the college in terms of moving students through. What we have to rethink, that word reimagine again. Many of us have been in higher ed most of our careers. I'm a career higher ed person, and so there's this certain way that I'm used to things, like convocation. You know, somebody that's not from higher ed may say, why are you doing an opening session? Because we always do that. That's been my experience, and I wouldn't feel comfortable if we didn't have COVID. We didn't have COVID. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. If we didn't have convocation, I wouldn't feel comfortable. But that's me speaking from a place of this has been my experience. And so this is what we've always done, at least in my experience at colleges. We've always had an opening and a welcoming, and I've always enjoyed that. And so think in your mind, those of you that have been in higher ed a while, or even if you've just gotten to Southwest and you're just starting to think about kind of higher ed, this is your first experience with higher ed, you start to see, okay, this is how we do what we do. And so think about those things that you have embraced as this is just a part of what we do. Now think about if it looked differently. You thinking? I can't see your faces. I'm just going to imagine that you're thinking about how we do things differently. That thing, that project, that program, that process that we've always done, that we know and we've held it as the Southwest way. What if we did things differently? What if that can be uncomfortable? But we are in uncomfortable times. And so we have to start to think differently. Next slide, please. And so COVID-19's impact on Southwest. So just a little information. Many of you know this already, but just some of this anyway. But let me share with you. So there are two primary streams of revenue at the colleges in not just Southwest, but in the state. Mostly in the States. Some of them have other streams if they have large endowments and philanthropy and all of that. But primarily, especially for us, we have two primary streams of revenue, and that's tuition and fees and state appropriations. And so tuition and fees, of course, as you know, that's based on enrollment. The number of students that enroll, it's based on that they pay tuition and fees. The more we have full-time students, the better, because they have more classes. And so full-time tuition, more revenue generated than part-time. We know that the majority of our students are part-time students, but that's how we generate our revenue, tuition and fees. First one. Second is state appropriations. And so what that means is it's outcomes based. So the state has about 9 to 10 or so outcomes that any college has to kind of achieve, or you work towards achieving. And so those are in areas like what is our student retention? Is it improving each year? How engaged are we in terms of our workforce development? What's our dual enrollment? Are we increasing in the numbers of students that we see coming to the campuses with dual enrollment? Credentials awarded. What are our associate degree granting? How many associate degrees did we grant? So those are just a few of the examples. And so when you see us focusing on dual enrollment and increasing our credentials or workforce development or retention efforts, it's because it's outcomes based. And so the better you do, the more appropriations or money, revenue that you generate for the institution that helps us continue to do the business of the college and to fulfill our mission. Unfortunately, enrollment and tuition and fees, we are challenged this year. So when we are looking at budgeting, each year we have to look at, how much we anticipate in terms of our enrollment. Do we anticipate a growth? Do we anticipate that we're going to remain or be flat in enrollment? Or are we going to anticipate a decline? Well, we had anticipated, because of COVID, all across the country, enrollments are down. And so we had budgeted for an approximate 10 to 15% decrease in enrollment. That's significant, but we thought, okay, if we do some cost-cutting measures, we can probably be okay with a 10 to 15% cut. And so that's what we started to do, cost-cutting and streamlining measures. You may have felt some of that with travel restrictions and some hiring freezes or chills, as we called it. And so just looking at how we can look at our operational expenses and cut some of those operational expenses to make up for that loss in revenue that would typically be generated by enrollment. So in addition to doing some cost cutting and streamlining, we cut some things, but we also increased our efforts in like enrollment, because if tuition and fees, if that helps to generate more revenue, then we need to do everything we can possibly do to increase our enrollment efforts. So that's where you see the providing the laptops to students and the year-round scheduling, making it as flexible as possible for students. We increased our marketing and advertising campaigns, and you see our students on television, and they're talking about their experiences at Southwest, or why they chose Southwest. We delayed the purge to implement an all hands on deck calling campaign. We had too many students on the purge list, and had we purged all those students on the date that we had intended, our enrollment would have been impacted even more negatively. And so we delayed the purge, and there was an all hands on deck. I think I may be wrong in the number, but I think it was around 4,000 students that we divided up the list of names and calling the students and nudging them to come on to campus and enroll. We had even a take 3, get 1 free promotion targeting our adult learners. And so these are folks that typically will self-pay. It's coming out of their pockets. They're not getting any type of financial aid. And so if they would take 3 classes, we would find a way, and through our foundation, they help to support us in paying for that 4th class. We've had 2 student town halls. We had just one yesterday. The last one was yesterday. The most recent one was yesterday, in which we talked and told students about the safety and to assure them that we've done a lot of work to make sure that they are safe, and to explain what online learning means. I mean, when you think about, we throw these words around, asynchronous and synchronous and polysynchronous and all of that, and they're like, what in the world? Even some of us are saying that too. But they really don't know. So we didn't want any of that to get in their way. So VP Faulkner, VP Hooker, and VP Neal have really on these town halls talked to students, talked them through, answered their questions, made themselves and their areas available so that students wouldn't have the questions about how safe would they be, or I don't understand online education. Again, the safety measures you've seen, if you've been on campus, you've seen the things that we've put into place to make sure that faculty and staff and students are safe. We also updated the student portion of our website. It's in phase 1. We're going to multiple phases to eventually take care of the entire website, but the first priority was those pages that were visited most frequently by students. Again, these are just a few of the measures. There are many more that I wasn't able to squeeze. You see, I squeezed all that on there because I didn't want to go to another slide. That's why I did that. So hopefully you can read that. But we tried to do as much as possible to make sure we can increase enrollment. Why? Directly related to revenue. Next slide. So despite our best efforts, we are at an approximate 30% decline in enrollment. Now, I looked at my daily report from Selena Grimes, the negative report that I get from Selena Grimes, and it's not her fault. She's just delivering the news. Today it was about 26%. So hopefully the efforts that we've taken, student affairs staff, I appreciate you so much. Coming back these next 2 weeks and having face-to-face, hopefully that made an impact these last couple of days, with students being able to have a walk-in presence to see student affairs staff to help to get them enrolled. Hopefully that has helped, and it so that 30% that we had seen just a couple days ago, it was 26%, I believe, when I saw those numbers this morning. But think back to what I said, that we have budgeted for a 10 to 15% decline. And so we find ourselves at 26% today, and that fluctuates. And so I've told you all the things that we've tried to do, all the things that you've done and been flexible with scheduling and laptops, and everything's online, and we're still having counseling and advising sessions. We have done a great deal. Not to say we can't do more in order to reach students, but I can be confident in saying that you all have done a yeoman's job in helping to keep the college moving and to reaching out to students in all the various areas of the campus. But sometimes there are those external contributing factors that are beyond our control. And I truly believe that that is what is contributing to our decline. And so some of those factors, fear. As much as we can talk about safety, if people are just afraid to come out of their homes, are afraid of even being online because this is new for them, there is not much that we can do if someone's afraid. And so we can make things available and to try to assure them that all is well, but fear is likely a factor. Loss of income. Students have lost their jobs. They're trying to get another job. Probably the last thing they're thinking about doing is going to school. So that's something that's a external contributing factor, and we can try to do as much as we can, but in terms of hiring and making sure that they have a job, that's not something that we're able to do. We can prepare them for a job, we can retrain, but if that's a concern, again, that's an external contributing factor. Childcare issues, homeschooling issues, those are factors that we know that our students are facing because we are facing them. Our largest feeder school district is Shelby County Schools. And so all of these children will be online. Many of you have children that you will have to worry about homeschooling and working at the same time. I am in that number. I have chosen to send my child to a virtual school. Why? Because some of you know my child has special needs. And so I needed to know that he was going to be safe because I'm not sure he will understand all of the instructions and the directions. And I think his school is doing as best as they can for safety. I'm just not sure if he will comprehend everything that he's not supposed to do. And so I have joined that team of stressed out parents who are trying to work full time and also to educate a child. And so that's my situation. That's probably some of your situations. Those are our students' concerns as well. And then unfortunately, we know that there have been family loss due to COVID. So the grief that people are feeling if they've lost a family member due to COVID, and we're talking about coming back to school, of course, they're not thinking about that in many cases. And so those are just a few of the possible external contributing factors that our students are facing. So even despite our best efforts, what we are challenged with are those things beyond our control. It's a pandemic. We can't control some factors. Next slide. And so 30% decline in enrollment will have a significant detrimental impact on the college. That equates to a possibly $10 to $11 million decrease in revenue. $10 to $11 million decrease in revenue. And so what we have been doing every week, we're meeting, the VPs and I are meeting, and we're discussing having these difficult conversations and discussing all these various budget scenarios. You know, if we do this, can we cut off some of that $10 million? You know, what can we do? We've had all these discussions, and the vice presidents have begun those discussions with their leadership teams as well, and talking to them about all along about what enrollment looks like and what that means. As we get closer to the start of school, the reality is becoming even more clear. You know, when we were out a few weeks or months, we could say, well, if we do all these things, we're hopeful. We're still hopeful. But it's getting closer to August 24th, and we're still seeing the numbers. And realistically, can we close that gap? We can close it somehow, in some ways, but how much? By how much? And so we've talked a lot about what we can do. But as I've said on a number of occasions, we have a lot of very smart people at this college. We have close to 1,000 employees. And so there may be some things that we have not considered. And we've considered a lot. And we think, a pretty good grasp on some possibilities, but there can always be other things for which we have not considered. And so when we move to the town hall portion of the conversation, this is what I'm asking for you, is to, maybe there are things we've not discussed. And I'd like to hear from you, your ideas on enrollment. We're getting close to the start of school, and we're at 26% decline in enrollment today. But perhaps there's some things that we've not thought about. I'd like to hear from you. We've cut costs to lessen the impact of enrollment, but there may be some other things that we have not considered. And so we want to hear from you. Again, I have a very strong leadership team. They're very smart, very intelligent folks, but it's just a few of us, a few brains around that table, the virtual table talking. But again, we have almost 1,000 employees of all intelligent folks working here at Southwest. And so perhaps there are things we have yet to consider. And so today is the day that we want to hear from you. And so in the question and answer phase, when we move, VP Graham is going to give you kind of those instructions on how to interact with us, even though we can't see you. And this is painful enough, not being able to see and talk to you and hear face to face. But this is where we are. This is our new normal. But we can still have that engagement. And I need to hear your ideas. And there's not, the only bad idea likely is one that's not stated. Now, it may not be a feasible idea, and we can let you know at that time. And some of those ideas we discuss, and some of those it's just a matter of collecting your information and going back to our respective departments, divisions, talking amongst the senior leadership about, oh, let's consider this, or we've already thought about that. But it never hurts to get input, and that's what we want to do today. Next steps. Next slide. And so even with everything that I just shared with you today, the mission still remains the same. We are in a pandemic. Yes, we have an enrollment that is 26% down today. The impact to the college will be significant if it remains. But yet somehow we have to keep our eye on why we are here. The mission remains the same. So we began the day with our students reciting their I Am poems, and they shared their story. That's why we're here. And we have to keep that in mind as we make decisions about how we move forward. Our work has had a major impact on the lives of countless members of our community. 96% of our students remain in the Memphis metropolitan area after graduation. We are a big deal in Memphis. This area needs a strong Southwest. And so the decisions that we make have to keep in mind our mission, and that is to provide the residents of Shelby and Fayette counties and the surrounding Mid-South region with a high quality and affordable post-secondary education that prepares them for associate degrees, future educational opportunities, and successful employment. Decisions we make have to keep the mission in mind. We have to. Next slide. And so despite what's happening in our communities, despite what's happening in our world, despite the negative news that I've had to share with you today, it's reality. But the hope in knowing that trouble don't last always, and I am understanding that that grammatically is not the way to say it, but one of my favorite songs, some of you may know that gospel music is my one of my favorite types of music. And I look to that as hope. And so when in hearing all of the challenges that we're facing, it's been some sleepless nights or fitful nights. And so I have to draw on what gives me hope and courage. And so I want to thank you for all that you do, even when the music is not cooperating. There you go. It's coming and it's not coming. We may have to send that out to you. For those of you that are not familiar with that song, it talks about trouble not lasting always. So we are in this period of time right now in which it is chaotic. It is stressful. We have some difficult conversations that we will have to have. But we have to rest assured in knowing that trouble will not last always. We have to come together and think of the best path forward. And some of the decisions that we have to make will not be easy. But after COVID, Southwest has to survive. We will not be defeated by COVID. And so if you could find it in your spirits to not let this totally get us down, let's figure out a way that we can move forward together and keeping in mind the mission of Southwest. Thank you, Daphne, for advancing my slides. I appreciate it. Trouble don't last always. Look like that song is saying, well, it may not last always, but it's getting ready to happen right now. I'm giving you some trouble. Thank you so much for everything that you do for our students and the community. I appreciate you. I'm so happy that you are with us today to have this conversation. I look forward to a discussion filled with ideas that can perhaps propel us forward. And at a later date, very soon though, we will send out information about after we've looked at everything that we have to do, some of your feedback and suggestions, we will be able to come back and say, this is the best path forward for Southwest so that we can continue the mission of the college. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all. Next up is Vice President Graham to give us our directions on how we proceed with the town hall.
Thank you, Dr. Hall, and thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you for the media relations and IT team and all the folks that were trying to help us so much this morning. Many of you have already found the Q&A box on this broadcast. So if you will put your questions in that Q&A box, I'll read the question and the appropriate person will try to answer it. I will tell you two important things. One, if you put your question in more than one time, you're kind of clogging up other people's questions. I'm going to try my best to answer those questions in order. So please put that question in and know that I'm going to try to get to it. If we do not get to all of your questions on this broadcast, my team in external relations will do our very best to reach out to whoever the appropriate person is on campus, answer those questions, and we'll have them put on the website. If you put your name in the box, we will even try to reach out with an email to answer your question if possible. So again, those questions are in the Q&A, and I'm going to go, if I can, to Mike Neal. There was a question asked in Q&A early on about which fee is going to be cut in half. So Mike, if you'll answer that question, but before you answer that question, Mike, let me just tell everybody, because we are running late, this town hall was supposed to go from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock. We are going to extend that time to 12:30 to try to get some more questions in. So again, right now we're going to go to Mike Neal, who's going to answer which fees, Mike, were you talking about that are going to be cut in half? Mike?
Thank you, Cynthia. It's a good question. So it's the international education fee. It's normally $15. This fall, it'll be $7.50. And for students who have already enrolled, it's been assessed at $7.50 rather than the $15. And let me reiterate, not only are there questions, but to Dr. Hall's point around ideas and suggestions for us as we try to navigate these treacherous waters over the next several months, looking for those as well. So, I want to reinforce that too. Thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to jump into our next question. Mike, it's also for you. How can the college ensure safety of all if you do not have, if you have some who do not follow protocol as it relates to access to campus amid the COVID safety procedures?
That is a great question, and I do think that it's important that the pledge that was sent out from our organization, I think Marketing and Communications sent it out last week, if I'm not mistaken, Cynthia. That pledge was developed by the Tennessee Board of Regents, TBR, for all colleges across the state. And it's important that for all students, faculty, and staff abide by that pledge. And that pledge is consistent with what we're doing as an institution and what we've done since we've gone back on campus with phase one. So we want to encourage everyone to ensure that you abide by the safety protocols here at the institution. And we will ensure, as we did in phase one, that we can do everything that we can to provide a very safe and clean environment with regular cleaning, with temperature checks, with masks, with hand sanitizers, with access to buildings. All those steps will continue to be in place and have been in place, and that's one thing we will do. And then for you individually, just take that pledge, and if you abide by that, I think we'll be fine.
Great, thanks, Mike. We appreciate that. Dr. Hall, the next group of questions are for you. We've got several questions about RIFs, about layoffs. When's the decision going to be made? As you might imagine, people are concerned about how this will affect their families. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes. So now that we are clear that we likely will not make up that 26% decrease in enrollment. That's what we have been talking about, not just at Southwest, but across the state. All of the colleges are grappling with how do we make up for the shortfall. Our impact has been even greater than across the state for some of the reasons that I mentioned. Our population of minority students has been impacted greater by COVID. And so we've not seen some of the increases that the other schools across the state have seen. We've not seen that. And so to answer the question, if layoffs are on the table, as much as it has pained us to come to this point, yes, that's on the table. I mentioned to you that 10 to 11% of $10 to $11 million shortfall. Despite our best efforts in cutting as much as we could from operational, when you get to 10 to $11 million and you have about 75% or more of the college's budget is focused on employees, there's no way around that conversation. It's just a matter of how do we do that? How do we approach a layoff or a RIF? What we still are trying to do in the background, and Sherman Greer is our government relations executive director, we are working mightily with our legislative officials to help them to understand what this pandemic is doing to our institutions, and if there could be some legislative support for colleges like Southwest, because if we are not given support to be able to utilize federal funding for revenue loss, some of you know about us receiving CARES funding. There were very strict guidelines on how those dollars could be spent. None of it could be spent on revenue loss. And Mike Neal, VP Neal, can go into details about that. And so without some kind of lifeline, that absolutely is a very strong possibility. In terms of the timeline, we are doing what we can to increase enrollment. August 24th is our first day of classes, and we have 14th day census date, and that lets us know in terms of how many students from a state perspective. They look at the colleges across the state on the 14th day, and that's your locked in number of students that you will have. That's when we know for sure. Now, are we not having conversations already? Yes, about how we proceed. What's the way that we proceed if we're going to have to do this? What a communication plan would be? What's the timeline for informing employees? So absolutely, we've had those conversations, just as other colleges across the state have had conversations. We started also, some of you already are aware that some of our part-time temporary, we did not renew contracts for part-time temporary. So we started that process. And so we're having a bigger conversation as it becomes clearer that this is our reality. And as we are seeing that at this point, we've not received the support that we had hoped that we would be able to receive from the federal government in terms of a lifeline for colleges like us. And so, yes, there will be a process. We're still having those conversations. We're still trying, again, to be hopeful that we will either get that support or we will find a way. We're still trying to cut our operational expenses. We've even gone as deep as looking at, okay, we've cut as much as we thought we could. Let's go back to the table. And so looking at then that the more that we can trim from other areas in terms of operational, that's the fewer that will be impacted. We're trying to do the best we can to not impact employees as much as we could. Given our circumstances. I see a comment that said, let's not dance around it or whatever. If you know me well enough, you know I don't dance well. Well, I do, but I'm not too good at political speech. And so to that person that said that, I understand, but you obviously don't know who you're talking to, because I don't play when it comes to people and taking care of employees. And so what we've tried to do is to make sure we're not impacting. One of the last things we want to do, I mean, you don't know the number of hours of stress that this leadership team has been under, trying to make sure that we don't lose an employee, not just to a RIF or a layoff, but to COVID. So this is what we live and breathe and sleep every day. We go to bed thinking about how we can make sure our employees are safe and how we can keep them a job. We are an educational institution. We prepare people for jobs. The last thing we want is to put people into that unemployment line. But the reality is that the students are not coming to us at the levels that we had hoped, despite our best efforts. And so the last resort is to impact employees. So it's not dancing, sir or ma'am, it's trying to protect. And so now that we see where we are, that's why you're involved in the conversation. Can't hear you, Cynthia.
Sorry, I turned my mic off. Thank you, Dr. Hall. We've got some folks who have got some ideas of maybe things we could do. I'll read a couple of those. One of those is, would faculty be willing to teach 2 online overloads for the price of 1? That may, I don't know if that's a question for you or Dr. Hooker, or maybe teach 1 overload for half, or maybe pro bono. I don't know if that's something that we're able to do, Dr. Hall, or if that's something that would help us.
I don't know, Mike, join in on this.
Mike Neal?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, no, from an overload perspective, our overload, whoever wrote that question is clearly knowledgeable. We spend a lot of money for overloads in the summer. It's millions of dollars that we spend for overloads. The ability for us to use that more efficiently in some creative way, absolutely, that's a great idea. You know, how we do that, we can take that offline for further discussion, but being more efficient in overloads is a very good suggestion.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Another suggestion we have is direct pay from employers to the college to educate their employees. Although employees may be reimbursed by the employer, it is often not possible for the employees in low-paying jobs to advance the money. Combined with the step above, work with employers to leverage Tennessee Reconnect for adult students, so that the employer is paying only for the cost that is not paid, and then hold classes for cohorts of the employees and hold these classes at the employer's site. Employers that they mentioned, MLGW, Brother, Shelby County Schools, City of Memphis, and more.
Well, I'll address the part related to employers, and I'll let Jackie speak to the part related to aid. We right now, that's a source of revenue for us, and we'd love to grow that in terms of employers sending their students here to the college. Sandra Wallace in our bursar's office, she facilitates that program. We have a number of that right now, and that's an excellent way for us to grow enrollment. Anything that we can do in that realm collectively as an institution would be certainly beneficial, to the points that Dr. Hall mentioned earlier around revenue growth and creating that revenue growth and enrollment. That's a good source and one that we could certainly tap into. And I'll let Jackie speak to the piece related.
The second point is very poignant and relevant. We know that Tennessee Reconnect is a tremendous opportunity to grow our adult student enrollment even more than we have. We've seen about a 38% increase in past years after Reconnect was established, but there's certainly opportunity, and you're exactly correct, whoever that presenter was, is that we have to leverage opportunities with employers, because often the access is there in terms of Reconnect. However, employers must be willing to provide opportunities and flexibility for their employees to return to the educational environment. But certainly one of those opportunities that will present itself is for us to actually go to those various workforces and teach classes on site. So great suggestion, and we certainly will follow up in tandem with Dr. Hooker.
You know, if I could say, many of you know that external relations includes community outreach and the fundraising arm. And what I would like to say about this is about relationships. Mm-hmm. So if you know someone at Brother, at MLGW, you know what, you can help Southwest. Get us a connection there. Get us a name that we can contact and reach out to. It's always easier when you have somebody on the inside helping you when we're trying to make those connections.
Let me add, in terms of, Cynthia, you mentioned about external relations and connections. One idea that we are pursuing now that I didn't mention is that looking at revenue generation. And so we've lost revenue and we're losing revenue, but how can we generate revenue? When I talk about thinking about doing things differently, we have some unutilized spaces at the college. And perhaps there can be partnerships that we can have with business and industry that they could lease space and we can bring in additional revenue. I talked about we have two streams of income, and I've been saying this since I've gotten here, that we need to have another stream of income. Because tuition enrollment will fluctuate from year to year. I mean, it just will fluctuate. Our needs continue. So whether we're up or down, we still have students that really need us to provide services. And what stresses me out is from year to year, we don't know sometimes what our money is going to look like. Appropriations the same way. But if we are also able to have an additional stream of revenue. So for example, some of our spaces that are unutilized, are underutilized. Can we have someone that has a company that is aligned with what we're teaching? We're not just saying going out and getting a Kroger nothing, no offense to folks that love Kroger, but we're not just saying putting a Kroger in the school, but do we have programs for which a company could lease some space, we get revenue, our faculty will have an opportunity to work hand in hand with business and industry, that experience, and they could provide apprenticeships for our students right at our campus. And so that is something that we are are exploring. I even had a conversation with the chancellor to make sure she would approve of that idea, and she was definitely in favor of it, again with the caveat that it is aligned with our programs, and making sure that we're better using the space that we have, which brings me to we had the big announcement in the news about our a partnership with the foundation to lease the Office Depot space. That is another idea that we have put the brakes on, quite frankly, with the support of the foundation as well. As much as we like the idea of a front door for our students and our music and performing arts, my heart is just sinking, because this would be and could be at some point a fantastic opportunity for us. We would gain 159 or so extra parking spaces at the Union campus, and we think it's a fantastic idea. We are very supportive of the project, but the reality is COVID has impacted us so significantly that if we're talking about anything, it's how do we keep people whole? How do we keep employees? How do we avoid the impact to people? As much as I would like that space, and I'm not saying that it's out of the question, the foundation really has the final say in terms of if we move forward, but in terms of the campus's commitment, financial commitment to a project, at this time, it is not prudent. And so it's on pause, not gone away. It's just on pause. We need to get through this immediate crisis. And so I think Dr. Hook had already shared this with the deans, and hopefully the music faculty and student affairs, they already knew. I think Dr. VP Faulkner had shared this information, so there shouldn't be new information that you're just getting from me. If it is, I apologize for that, because it shouldn't have been. But that is just a decision that had to be made given where we are right now, which we're trying to save and maintain. We will talk about growth after we get through this period, but we're trying to maintain and save the folks we have right now.
Thank you. Let's go to another question. I believe this one, VP Faulkner, would be for you. Have students received a what to do on the first day set of directions?
So students have not received a what to do just yet. They will be receiving a communique that talks about the importance of attendance, how we will reissue the Achieving Your Dreams Online document, which helps students with assessing some of the virtual resources and knowing how to assess teams and polls. And Dr. Hooker can speak to information that students will be receiving from faculty.
Yes, I'm sure the deans have been in communication with the faculty that, and I even shared with the students on yesterday, to expect an email from faculty prior to class starting, giving them any specifics or information that they need for the first day. So the students are aware that is coming, and then in our meeting today, we'll talk about that again. But that is going to be an important piece because our students are going to come. They're going to need some insight. They're going to need some direction. So there's going to be an ask of all faculty to reach out to students prior to class starting. And in addition to not only providing specific instruction, there's an ask that you provide your syllabus as well, so the students have the opportunity to sort of navigate and sort of figure out what's next as they matriculate through this academic year.
Thanks, Dr. Hooker. Our next question, we'll go to Mike Neal. Mike, Brenda Williams asked, have we looked at eliminating software programs / platforms that aren't being utilized? They're duplicated or no longer needed as a cost-saving measure. Have we looked at that, Mike?
Absolutely, and Michael Boyd and I had a discussion this morning. Michael, I'll let Michael Boyd join and chime in as well. Certainly, technology that we insource, that we use that is not beneficial to us as an institution is something that we discussed that we should look at. And also there may be technology that we are acquiring, our assets we're acquiring through a third party that we could leverage and do our own and not pay the third party and save money. So that's an option as well. Michael?
Yeah, we're constantly looking at duplicated software because there is software that we've seen that when people come and try and get new software, we always say, hey, please try and utilize the one that we already have to the fullest. So we're constantly looking at all of our software to make sure we don't have too many duplicates.
Great. Thank you both. Our next question is another one that might be helpful. It's about scheduling. Scheduling, I believe there we go. Here's Dr. Hooker. Scheduling is still too convoluted. If employees don't know what the formats are and what the section types are, how do we expect students to understand? It is past time to define or redefine a standard for sectional designators that helps everyone. Campuses have a number in the first slot of 3, and then L for online, H for honors, WC for weekend, DE for dual, H in the middle of hybrid. Now we have polycentrious delivering using the old telecourse T for teams. We do not explain this to students. Then we have departments that make up new sections designators without communicating. So it sounds like there's just a lot of kind of insider information. Dr. Hooker, can you speak to this and how this is handled?
Yes, we realized probably about a month or so ago that this was an issue. VP Faulkner and I had a town hall with the students, and to be quite frank with you, this repeatedly came up. So what the marketing team has done, Daphne Thomas and team have actually created some graphics that sort of speaks to this. And I don't know, from my perspective, when we had the conversation with students on yesterday in the student town hall, I shared this, I spoke about this, I talked about the different types of instructional modalities, and honestly, no questions actually came up. I was surprised, but at the same time, I was very excited because I'm hopeful that the students sort of understand at this particular time. Is there an opportunity to make sure, that faculty is well aware of what these instructional modalities are and how to identify them? Yes. So we'll continue to work on that. But as you see what's listed or what is posted here on our screen, I think we've clarified and provide some much needed clarity for our students. And the questions were not as rampant as they were a month ago.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Hooker. I think the next question is also for you. I guess it's more of a suggestion than a question. This person is suggesting we create an easier transfer path to all degree programs at Lamoille and Owen. Have we looked into that?
I would like to say that we've probably considered that, but that is certainly something that we'll put everything on the table. One of the things I shared with I had a quick call meeting yesterday with the academic affairs leadership team. I said all hands on deck. So that basically means that we're going to consider every single thing that we possibly can, as Dr. Hall said, to impact employees as much as we possibly can. We want to create pathways that provide seamless transition for students to reach their goals. And at the same time, we want to make sure that we're putting students in a place where some of this, the section numbers and all of these things are just clear to them. But with COVID and all of the things that we're dealing with, we're all trying to figure this out, and we're working together. The students are doing an amazing job. Faculty, trust me, you all are doing an amazing job, and together we will figure this out. I'll share today. I'm going to avail myself to you as much as I possibly can. It is this type of information that I need to share with the other VPs to make sure that we're considering this. So Ms. Alberta has done a wonderful job of scheduling some times to meet with our respective divisions, but today I'll announce virtual office hours. So I am going to avail myself to learn more so that we can do more.
Thank you, Dr. Hooker. Melanie Williams thinks that we should be reaching out to students and helping them, and I'm assuming this will go to VP Faulkner. VP Faulkner, this person is asking, I'll just read it to you. To help with student issues associated with the fear of the pandemic as well as homeschooling, can we coordinate, organize to have digital resources available to help promote the correct information on COVID-19 and in the very least links to digital resources to help student parents navigate homeschooling?
Okay, so I'm not sure that that is a question relative to navigating Southwest, but how can we be a resource to parents who are having concerns? And I certainly think there's opportunity that exists through our continuing education, our workforce development, to be able to assist parents. We know that that is a tremendous niche. Dr. Hall talked about her own challenges. I've experienced the same this summer. And as we think about individuals who are multi-degreed and having some challenges, you have to imagine what parents who don't necessarily have an inclination for technology are facing as they are attempting to help their children navigate online learning. So I think that that is a wonderful idea and opportunity. And I will pitch it to Dr. Hooker for workforce development and continuing education consideration.
Yes, and I think that's an opportunity. In our workforce, Anita Bracken and I, we've had several conversations about how to make sure that the community know what's taking place at Southwest. So about 2 weeks ago, her team and I, we spent some time just kind of talking about some ideas. We're going to follow up very soon to see if we can put some of those ideas into action. So I concur totally. There's an opportunity. We talked about community partners. There's an opportunity to customize some of what we do to meet their needs. Again, all hands on deck, and we're open to all ideas, but there's certainly an opportunity with our workforce development. And then VP Graham, you and I discussed, opportunities for a grant this morning. So we'll look at all of these opportunities to continue to push our agenda forward.
Great, thank you. Barbara Lloyd has suggested that we develop a relationship with high school counselors, even in Tipton and Fayette County. VP Faulkner, I think we're already doing that. So we can present our programs to high school seniors and increase the fall enrollment. This can even be done virtually. Yes. Even if high school seniors plan to go to a university, we can encourage them to attend Southwest to get their general ed at a lower cost. What would you say to Barbara?
I would say she is spot on and directly speaking to our conversations within student affairs about how we can, again, leverage this moment and to ensure that we continue to provide high quality services to our student populations in a virtual environment. When we abruptly moved to this environment in March and our high school partners within local districts did the same, it created a different environment. Whereas, in the past, in the spring, it was high activity. We actually were in high schools helping students get the final documents that were needed for admission, helping with new student orientation. We have even created an experience called NSO on the Go, where we actually went into high schools and did the full new student orientation and ensured that they walked away with the schedule. When all of us moved to a virtual environment, and largely many of our feeder districts, such as Shelby County Schools, who of course serves over 100,000 students, moved to that virtual environment, and we lacked the access to counselors and those traditional methods, it certainly impacted our ability to do some of those types of activities for this fall. However, we've continued to entertain students and to engage students through virtual means. We had a every Friday recruitment event where we spoke with students, prospective students and parents, answered their questions about career assessments, career inventory, financial aid, admissions. We've even worked with our partnering districts to help students overcome the barrier that they've had this summer with getting their transcripts, because we require transcripts in order to complete admission. So we've been very creative and will continue to do so. We know that as we continue largely remotely this fall, we've also purchased or in the process of purchasing a virtual tour. so that students can actually tour Southwest campus virtually. A large part of the decision-making process is for people to feel connected to the space. So it's been difficult that we've not been able to do tours, but we are looking at various means, again, to continue to provide those services, answer the questions that students and parents have, and to engage our municipalities and school districts.
Thank you, VP Faulkner. We've got a second question about that, so I'm hoping that answered their question also. She was wondering if you would reach out to Shelby County School Guidance Counselors to obtain that list, but you did.
Yes.
Now, she mentions the 2019 high school graduates who haven't declared a college upon graduation. Have we reached out to them too?
We have done reclamation projects. One thing that we did in a unique manner is working with Tennessee Achieves this year. We have a population that qualifies for Tennessee Promise annually, but that conversion is very low. So many students in Shelby County go through the entire process, but still do not enroll the first semester out. What we're seeing is that often those students register the next year. So we've been working with Tennessee Achieves actually to do nudge campaigns for prior years as well, to try to encourage students to go, as well as a national and a statewide and local campaign about go time. We know that this is the ideal time that students should be enrolling in the midst of this pandemic. I've said often that on the other side of a crisis such as this is that student who has been prepared and upskilled that will be able to bounce back and go into employment as this recession ends. And so it's important that students engage in college right now. We have conveyed that message and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Our next question is for VP Mike Neal. Mike, how do we ensure that some employees do not come on campus without signing in and going through the temperature scans?
It's a great question. So we have control points. So one thing is all the campus buildings are locked except for the buildings that are open for courses, class schedules, or if we're doing construction, which is, that's out here at Macon with what we're doing in Fulton building. So when you come on campus, I'll just use Macon as an example. All the traffic now is flowed into one direction. You can only come on campus in one direction. And in that direction, at that point, when you get on campus, your temperature is taken there. And that's the access point, and that's how we control it. So you can't get on Macon and come on campus if you're, and anyway, if you're coming on campus, that's the only way you can get on campus, is to come through that one access point. Union is similar, however, Union is controlled at each individual building. So I'll just use a few examples. At the nursing building, all the doors are locked except for the front door. You have to go through the front door to get a temperature scan to get into the building. So we've got it structured like that so we can try to prevent those situations and that question that just came up. And that's what we did back, started in July, and it's worked very effectively to date.
Great, thank you. Our next question is for Dr. Hooker. Dr. Hooker, you spoke about workforce development, and I believe this would go directly to that, but let's see what you think. Can we offer online classes specific to certain industries? For example, offer a degree plan for FedEx employees where only the people at the company are in the class. That was from Tracy McAllen.
Wow, and that is a great question. And fortunately, when I arrived at Southwest, this is something that we were already having discussions about. VP Faulkner has done a wonderful job of meeting with U of M to sort of put some of this in play. And then also there's an opportunity to collaborate with the University of Memphis to create another program that we have across the state. So this has already transpired. It has taken place. It is something that we need to gain more momentum regarding. So yes.
Great, thank you. This next question I believe would go to VP Faulkner, and VP Faulkner, forgive me if I'm calling on you incorrectly, but I'm sure you can tell me who should get this. Cassandra suggested a possible revenue partnering with the YMCA for host sites for public school students, letting our students and teachers tutor, facilitate for their work study hours. VP Faulkner, could you answer or speak to that?
I certainly can. We are really hitting a challenge space with work study this year, and I'm going to be as brief and not go too much in the weeds with financial aid legalese, but we're in a precarious place. Last year, as the pandemic hit in March, we received guidance from the Department of Education that allowed for us some flexibility with how we utilized work study monies. We were allowed to continue to pay our students so that they could receive this much needed resource despite their inability to work on campus. In normal situations, we can only allow a very small percentage of our students to work in off-campus sites, and we have in the past met that requirement. So it sounds like that's what I'm hearing with the recommendation
Yes.
about the YMCA. So we have met that in the past. This year, as we continue remote environment, that guidance and exception that was granted in 2020 has not been extended to 2020, 2021. So we are, again, very limited with how we can utilize work study dollars this year. We are speaking with our legislative officials. We are certainly speaking out of a place of advocacy for our students because we know that this will be detrimental to our students. But we have been told and cautioned to allow remote work because upon audits, we are required to produce direct proof that we can confirm that the student worked the number of hours that they stated they worked and be able to show and evidence how they did such. That's very difficult remotely. And so, again, we continue to seek ways to assist our students with utilizing work study dollars. And we're certainly working through Mr. Sherman Greer, who is our governmental affairs person, to sound the alarm very loudly and consistently that this is a concern for our students. And when we serve a population of students who are about 50%, and when you take out dual enrollment, you're actually talking about 60% of our students are Pell Grant eligible, which means by federal standards, they are below the poverty line. This is a difficult decision. This is a difficult decision and will have far-reaching consequences on our students.
VP Faulkner, we have another issue that I believe will fall under you. This person asked for an updated organizational chart with the latest contact information. They're mentioning that many students have complained they haven't been able to reach certain departments, and I'd like to assist them. This employee would like to assist the students as much as they could, which we greatly appreciate. I'm tossing that to you since admissions falls to you and recruitment.
That's no problem. I will say that annually we send out an updated organizational chart to ensure that everyone knows who our leadership team is in student affairs, and I think in actually all of our divisions we do this with updated contact information, and we will certainly do the same. To speak to the concern about students and their inability to contact people, we recognize that was an initial concern. That was an initial problem when we moved to remote work. We had to work with information technology to get what we call soft phones, so that when our students called us, they were not receiving voicemails and return calls, but they were receiving real-time calls. We have now deployed soft phones throughout the Division of Student Affairs and published the information as to where students can call and receive receive an active call answer. And so one of the concerns that we had previously, and I can describe the financial aid situation, is that we have a call center that we work with. And that call center retrieved calls and then escalated that to the financial aid team. We know that during this period in August is when our students are accustomed to coming on campus, hence our 2-week on-campus campaign. They're accustomed to having the ability to talk in real time to a caring professional. We wanted to remove that barrier. So now you will see all of our financial aid team with their soft phone numbers published so that students can actually call admissions and get a person, call advising and get a person, call financial aid and get a person. So we have certainly worked to eliminate that gap. And I also encourage, as you're working with students, to take advantage of this 2-week span where students can actually schedule appointments through the EAB Navigate app to come on campus if they need to have a conversation that they don't feel is conducive to the virtual environment.
Great, thank you. I appreciate your answer. I'm going to answer the next one. It's from Courtney Ward. Courtney asked, could the college run an advertisement over the radio or TV about students attending Southwest having access to laptops? Courtney, we're doing that right now, and I'm sorry that you haven't seen any of our ads. I think that Daphne Thomas, it looks like, has connected our one of our ads to your question, so I hope you find that helpful. But yes, we are trying to get the word out about the laptop program. Let's see, our next question is going to go to VP Neal. Mike, are doors being secured where access is not allowed in buildings? If I'm not supposed to be in that building, can I get in that building?
You cannot. All the doors are locked, yeah, so they've been locked virtually since we closed. You know, we went 100% online. But only when we came back for phase 1 in July, the buildings that we're allowing access to on a specific campus are unlocked. All of the other buildings are locked.
Okay, thank you, VP Neal. Dr. Hall, I'm going to toss the next couple of questions to you. Have you looked at a buyout plan for the college, as the college offered in 2011, and will there be salary cuts across the board? Oh, your mic's.
Okay, I'm unmuting it. Everything. So when I talked earlier about those scenarios, budget scenarios that the VPs and I have talked about, those are the types of scenarios that we're running and looking at. And Mike probably gets tired of, and I think Sherry Green also assists Mike with this as well. Asking, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? What would the cost savings be? And so, yes, we now with the buyout, and Mike, of course, is much more prepared and educated to talk about what that means. But Mike, you can always jump in as well. But with the buyout, it's more of an investment that the college would have to make on the front end. And it would have to be an attractive enough incentive for people to say, yes, I think I would take that and leave. And then on the subsequent year, we would see that savings because we wouldn't have that salary and those benefits. Mike, how did I do with that?
You did absolutely fantastic, Dr. Hall. And yes, we do run a bunch of scenarios. And to Dr. Hall's point, you know, that's, you know, when you're looking at things like this and you're trying to be creative and lessen the impact, you do look at a bunch of scenarios and you run various different models. And so everything is being looked at in that way. And Dr. Hall mentioned earlier, we're not alone. We're benchmarking with our colleagues across the state. I had a conversation with one of my colleagues last night for an hour on the phone about another urban college like us that's dealing with similar issues and benchmarking around, you know, what works and what could come about. So we continue that for sure. But you did great, Dr. Hall.
Thank you, thank you. And we are having the presidents, all 40 of us across the state, meet by phone with the chancellor and her team every Monday and Wednesday. And some of these conversations we have about the challenges that we are facing. A few of us are doing worse than some of the others, and you might imagine if it's not necessarily an apples to apples comparison if you're looking at Southwest that's in a larger urban environment and a smaller institution where there are no competitors in terms of higher ed. And so when you have maybe more options for students or maybe more challenges that students are facing, that would equal some of the challenges that we're having. I also want to say before I move into the other parts of the questions that we are looking not only at the state but nationally, what's happening across the state, especially, I mean, the country with like institutions. VP Faulkner shared a very sobering article with the VPs earlier this week that talked about similar challenges that colleges, especially urban colleges, those of us that have large minority populations, again, just as I said in my presentation, the fear, the childcare issues, the loss of income, families impacted by COVID. So the other colleges are across the country are experiencing some of the same things. And so we could always have more ideas to outreach to students, but there are those external factors that we cannot control. And so we can get the message out. We've increased advertising. We have the laptops, using CARES funding the way that we are legally allowed to use CARES funding. And so when you hear about the laptops being purchased, it's not coming from college dollars, is coming from CARES funding. So CARES, I do not want to give the impression that CARES has not been a tremendous asset for the colleges, because it has been. They're just those guidelines, and we can only use it a certain way. And it's primarily for students, or it's for the institution from a perspective of like what we're having to buy with all the PPE and the safety COVID related. So they're really strict guidelines that we are held to those guidelines, because there will be an auditing process after this is all over to make sure that we have done what we were supposed to do with those federal dollars. So we're looking across the country at what's going on. And so that's where it is, the reality is that it's not just us. We are doing everything that we can do. Other colleges that are similarly situated are doing some of the same ideas that we have and outreach, and they're still seeing tremendous decline in their enrollment, especially those that have large minority populations. And so as much as we don't want to admit that, or to think that we are super special, which we feel that we are in the same category as some other schools. And that's why the decision has to be made on how we go forward. Again, we talk about this across the state as well. No one, to my knowledge, has actually made that move when we're talking about furloughs or layoffs or rifts, but they're also having, those presidents are having these conversations as well. I think a lot of us are waiting to see what enrollment looks like. Finally, what's our 14-day number to really know, okay, wow, we really did not close the gap. We're doing everything we can between now and that 14th census date to close the gap, because then that helps us. So if right now we're at a 26% decline in enrollment, that's better than it was. It was 30%. And so we're hopeful that the rest of this week, and I think we're having a super Saturday, either this Saturday or next Saturday, I think, where we're hoping that we get people coming in. Our students are notoriously, or historically, whichever you want to use, late in coming to enroll. And so our hope is that that's holding true. But as you know, hope is not a strategy. And so what we're wanting it to be, just as it's been in previous years, they've just, wait until the last minute, and they're going to flood, this week and next week and Saturday, we're going to see a flood of students. That it is becoming clearer that that may not be likely will not be what we experience. We're trying. But then you also have COVID. And so there's the safety factor. So the way that we've had it in the past, where there are just lines everywhere, we can't do that, because COVID that's dampening that ability to do that. We have our own faculty and staff, and the student affairs staff that are helping students. We can't have them bombarded with people circling them and all around them and in lines, and the way that we usually have at leading up to first day, where it's kind of chaotic with a lot of people being here. With COVID, we can't do that. And so it's appointment only, because we have to control the flow of people that will interact with our student affairs staff, that will interact with our public safety. Public safety is doing a great job of helping with temperature checks and all that, but someone also has to make sure we're safe, not just from a temperature check, but they have to make sure that while they're not taking temperatures, someone's not somewhere taking a computer home. So right, and so we have to, so they're trying to do as much as they can, so we have to control the flow. So a lot of things have just gotten in the way of us. I mean, we know we're not having a normal semester anyway, but even more than you maybe realize, we're not able to do the normal things that we do typically because of COVID. In terms of the going back to the whole salary thing, everything is on the table. Let me tell you, there's not one classification of employee that is not on the discussion of, okay, let's look in terms of administrative levels of, leadership. And let me say, I think that everybody that's here is doing some type of leadership, but with the titles and the administrative support, every conversation and scenario we are having. And so I want that message to be clear, that you're not having a bunch of suits sitting around a table saying you go, you go, you go, and we're not looking at all the different levels of employees and looking at all the classifications. Again, when I talked about the mission of the college, what's mission critical, what do we need to do? We also, when in a crisis, one thing about leadership that you always have to keep in mind, as difficult as it is, it's easy to lead in good times when money is flowing and things are plentiful. It's difficult when it gets to be challenges like what we are experiencing, the likes of which we've never experienced. So there's no president with whom I can speak and say, so what did you do during the last pandemic to get through this? Because they've not experienced that. So all of my mentors, we're all saying, oh my God, we just got to get it together, and we have to plan, and we have to be organized, and we have to be strategic, and we have to keep things in mind. There is no playbook for this. And so that's where we are coming together. We're having these conversations. We're talking about what we need to do. We're keeping the mission of the college, because in addition to planning for this crisis, as huge as it is and as lasting and devastating as this crisis is, let me say, to not only life, but just business and industry. You see what it's doing across the country. We somehow have to also think about the future. So this has presented a leadership challenge like none other, where you have to plan for right now to move through this crisis, which is not just right now. We're probably looking at maybe a couple years, even after there's a vaccine, and we'll never go back to total normalcy, but there's a vaccine or something. We still have the reverberations of what has occurred with COVID, right? And so then you have to look at still, how do you keep moving forward? Because after the pandemic, the college still has to be standing. We still have to provide the services to our community. So you have to make short-term decisions in a crisis mentality. At the same time, you're thinking long range for the life of the college and the needs of the city and the mission of the city. And so that's difficult. And we are doing all we can to make sure we keep all of these things in mind, and looking at what do we need now from a short-term perspective, and then what do we need from a long-term perspective. So it's not just a matter of just going across the board and say just cutting all this and cutting this and cutting that, because after COVID, you want to still have a viable institution. So we have decided to take a more surgical approach, looking at the mission, looking at what we need to sustain us right now, what we need to have a healthy college afterwards. And so all of that is going into play, which makes it even more difficult. It's easy when you can just say, just cut this, cut this person, cut these positions. Then when we come out of COVID, we have a really weak institution and we're starting over. We've made some really good momentum the last 5 years. We're trying to keep it going as much as we can. And that's why you just can't take a hatchet and start just slicing all willy-nilly, as they say. We have to really be strategic in doing that, and very surgical. And that's what we plan to do. But there are no areas that are not being discussed. None.
Great. Thank you, Dr.
Buyouts are being discussed. Yes, absolutely. Again, those scenarios. So Mike and his team, they'll run scenarios and say, okay, if we do this, or we eliminate this or that or whatever, this is how much we'll save. But it's when you're talking $10 to $11 million, that's a significant amount that you're talking about. So in the past, when we did some cuts, then we were able to, VPs and we sit around the table and we're like, okay, we're gonna not do this, not do that. Okay, now we've gotten to our million. And that took forever. The VPs are not on the screen to nod along except for Cynthia, but that took forever to go back and negotiate, okay, do this and that. So imagine that at 1 million, 2 million that we were trying to cut to now we are at 10 or 11 million, which you can't move away from people. Not with that amount. I mean, as much as we are looking at all the operation, and again, I've charged my team with going back, looking at all these contracts, all these third-party contracts, all these upgrades and enhancements that we plan to do, unless it's about safety and something we might need to hold off on that. We are looking through everything, but even with that, you're talking 10 or 11 million. If enrollment remains the way it is. So we're having to do, it's not an either or, it's a both and. We're looking at cost saving, cutting, and at the same time, ideas for growing and increasing enrollment, and however we can be flexible and nimble, that's what we need. And so I'm loving the fact that we're getting these ideas. What we're going to do is take all the ideas that we're getting, and we're going to kind of look, depending on if it's student affairs or academic affairs or finance and administration focus, and kind of, again, those will be added into our conversations. The VPs and I meet every Monday. Every Monday we meet. And so and then in between the Mondays, we're emailing and calling. So it's like we're meeting all the time, but each Monday we're having more conversations. Budget is, of course, a standing agenda item, and we're looking at scenarios. And so Mike and his team, thank you, finance and administration. I know you all are doing a lot of work in kind of calculating what this looks like. And so this just gives us more information, more ideas to kind of add to those that we've already discussed, to come up with how we can arrive at a reduction of that amount of money if enrollment remains the same, right, at the 26%. I think I saw someone ask about how are we looking across the state. We look at every Friday, the campuses have to send to TBR where we are, kind of point in time data, and so we can look and see where we are. Some are doing better than others for the reason that I just mentioned, just different demographics, different location, but we're not faring very well. But we are still trying. We have not given up, but at the same time, we had to bring this conversation to you. I am very apologetic that it had to be at Convocation, because, you know, Convocation is not supposed to be this type of conversation, but given the fact that it's COVID, it's a pandemic, we won't be able to pull us all together so easily, the way we've been able to at least have this day to bring you all together. And because we are right at where we see that the reality is that this gap will likely still be significant by the start of school and the 14th day of classes. This was the best time to have you to give us some input, because we will then take that and continue our conversations, our scenarios. So this gives us more information. You have been very helpful as we start to wrap up the question and answer period of the forum. This gives us a lot of information that we can process. Some things that I'm seeing in the Q&A, it's already on the table. We've already discussed it, but then I'm seeing some things that we have not discussed. And so we can factor that in as well. And Mike, you might want to come back and kind of talk about timelines in terms of follow-up, because we've brought you into the conversation. And so we're going to keep you posted. Again, it's not the happiest news, but that it is reality. And so this was the best time to bring you in with information that we have that we have to share with you. Again, thank you for your feedback, Mike. Again, if you can kind of give some idea of kind of how we proceed next, I invite you to continue to submit your ideas for our discussion. Note that each Monday the VPs and I meet and we have these scenarios, and so any information that you can give prior to Monday would be great, because then that allows us, sorry, I was swiping a fly, that allows us to have Mike and his team figure out, do another scenario. And so we come back on Monday and we kind of look at these conversations. So Mike, if you can give us a timeline, and that'll be helpful.
Absolutely. Dr. Hall alluded to one of the key decision points is going to be on 14th day. So, the first, second week of September, we'll know what things look like for fall, and it'll be settled in terms of what the numbers are. Between now and then, that's when we will continue to run the scenarios and look at various different options and refine and refresh based on excellent feedback we're getting today. I heard some great ideas. The few that I jotted down, there's probably a million more on the right-hand side. I can't see them all, but we want to factor those in, and we can factor those in and come up and run various different scenarios. So 14th day will be a critical one. We'll make decisions at that point based on where we are as a leadership team, what the numbers look like and what our options are. Shortly thereafter, whatever we decide to do, we have a budget we have to submit to TBR in October. And in that budget, whatever decisions we make, that will have to be disclosed. We'll have to get to that point in the late September time period, submit our information up to TBR. They will review it, provide feedback, and we should get feedback from TBR, Tennessee Board of Regents, by the middle of September. By the middle of October. And then at that point, whatever we want to communicate in a more broader communication sense, decisions that we'll be making in terms of beyond that for the institution, it'll be nailed down because we'll have the approval back from TBR.
Mike, I see a question that I really want you to address from a timeline perspective. Cynthia, I'm sorry taking but I see a question that I think you need to answer right now. Are we saying that there may be layoffs this semester? So we need to make sure people understand what that means.
Yeah, no, I think that to Dr. All's point, we're trying to figure out where we stand. So we're not making any decisions right now. This semester is let's evaluate the situation, figure out where we are. Dr. Hall just mentioned that other institutions are doing the same thing and we're all in the same place. No one's making a decision right now because we're trying to find other options. We're trying to get more revenue. We're trying to give it to the last minute. So no, we're not making any decisions right now. I don't anticipate, unless you disagree, Dr. Hall, we don't anticipate anything happening between now and the end of the semester.
Right. So to answer your question, person, because that would be my question as well. Okay, I hear all you trying to do all these things, but if I have to start looking for another job, don't tell me in two weeks that I have to be gone. So that would be my concern. And so what we're saying is no. Absolutely. We're trying to find all the different avenues. Now by the 14th day of this semester, we will know our census count. If we were going to have to do a layoff, furlough or whatever, RIF or whatever, it would not take effect until January. Absolutely. Right? That's not a whole lot of time between, September and all, but we're not. So, but this is the earliest that will know. 14th day is the earliest that we will know definitively if we were to have some sort of layoff or whatever, when it would be effect. So we're not saying we find out the 14th day in September and then 2 weeks later you're gone. We're talking about at the earliest January, right, Mike?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely positive.
So hopefully that answers your question, gives you a little bit more information about your planning for your life, because here's how I feel as a person who is a employer, that I always put myself, I am also an employee. And so if the chancellor were thinking about reorging or whatever, I would want to know as soon as possible so that I can start planning my future. So these are what we're telling you are things that the college has to do to sustain itself, right? And to make sure our mission is continued. At the same time, you have to be concerned about you. And I get it. And what you need to do for your life. So we have to think about all of our lives, of course, but we have to think about what we do from a college perspective. But employees have to know what you have to do, because regardless of what's happening with Southwest, your bills still continue. Your expenses don't stop just because our enrollment goes down. And so I understand that. We understand that totally, which is why we are coming to you today. As soon as we really had the stark numbers that, okay, we've done as much as we have been able to do at this point. It's not paying off the way we would have liked for it to, for a lot of reasons. that other colleges are experiencing the same thing, and they're doing their best also. It's just nationally, this is what's happening. And so this was the best and the earliest that we could come to you with information. Are we still hopeful? Absolutely, we are. We're hoping that these next 2 weeks show us something different. That students, I went into the library. They've done a really nice job of setting up at Macon Cove the 2 weeks where financial aid and admissions and all will be in the library, so that students can come through and hopefully have that face-to-face touch that they want. I went through and asked, how are things going? Have we had a steady stream? And I got kind of, first day not so great. Yesterday was a little bit better. Financial aid folks said they had kind of a steady stream of walk-ins, and so that's good. And I'm just staying on top of it with Jackie Faulkner, and she's letting me know how appointments are going. And so we're hopeful, getting the word out that they can come in, and so we're hopeful that could cut some things. VP Faulkner, I think we still have some numbers out that we haven't factored in from dual enrollment.
Absolutely. I mentioned earlier that Shelby County Schools is very different than many of our partnering, especially when you look at institutions that are similar to Southwest. Most of those institutions have started school back. So when you think about a Nashville district, they've already started back, so they're able to leverage their dual enrollment a little differently. Shelby County Schools, which is our largest feeder and our largest supplier of dual enrollment students, will not start back until August 31st. So you heard Dr. Hooker talk about a new part of term for September 8th with dual enrollment. So when we start thinking about 14th day, that number even looks a little differently for our dual enrollment population. This time last year, we served about 1,000 dual enrollment students, which was equivalent to about 300 FTEs. So that's when you start thinking about the impact of enrollment on revenue. That's a big revenue driver. So we are very optimistic that we will have a consistent number of students who are interested in dual enrollment, and even more. What we've seen our district do at Shelby County Schools is to encourage even more students, because everything will be virtual anyway, and they have been provided tools by Shelby County Schools. So we're trying to encourage students who would not otherwise participate to consider participating this year. So yes, we're looking at about another 1,000 head count, hopefully more, that will be added to what we see today.
Yes, and so that's, again, there's hope. But again, we wanted to bring this conversation to you as soon as possible, and let you know that this is a conversation that we're having. Not a pleasant one, but it's real. We're all adults, and this is the business of the college that you should be aware of, and especially as it relates, it impacts you. And so that's why we're having the conversation now. We're still doing all the things we can, and we're hopeful that 26 that I saw today is lower tomorrow. Selena sends them out. Lets us know where we are, and then every Friday we get them to see how we're looking across the state. And so each time, I open the emails, we all open them. It's like, okay, what's it looking like today? And hoping that it's getting better. And the weird thing is, it's up and it's down, and it's fluctuating. Today I was a little encouraged because it's only been it was 30 like yesterday.
Yes, we've teetered between 28 and 30 for the last few weeks. So when you talk about this 2-week campaign push that's happening, the all hands on deck calling campaign, we're certainly seeing some conversions because to move now to 25% below head count and 26,
25, okay.
Absolutely, and 26 below FTE lets us know that we're seeing more students get in. And so we are very optimistic that we will continue to see that number decline, but again, having realistic conversations about where we will land, and beyond the 10 to 15% that was originally anticipated.
That's right. That's right. And so thank you to the external relations team, marketing, Cynthia, your team, Daphne and your team, Diana, RJ, I start mentioning everyone, Sherman. I'm sure I've missed some people, but they're doing great work with advertising, getting the word out. and trying to make sure that we are, people know what we're doing and know that we have laptops, and getting students, real students, and that people can look at it and say, I know her, or I know him, or I can relate to that story. We're getting Jackie and Dr. Hooker, VP Faulkner and Dr. Hooker on radio programs. And listen, we're pulling out all the stops because we have to. And we're being clear-eyed and realistic in what the numbers look like, but at the same time, we are doing everything that we can to get those numbers to look better. And so we will continue to do that. That will not stop. Your ideas will be very helpful to us as well. Continue to your respective vice president, send your emails, keep them coming after today. Because again, we will use all this information. I'm going to ask Cynthia and her team to kind of compile all of them. I know, as we've done with student town halls, they've put the answers in a format so that the students can get their questions answered that weren't answered during the town hall. I'm asking that we do the same thing for faculty and staff, as well as to get all of the ideas that have been generated now and going forward to us, so that they can be a part of some of these scenarios that we're talking about. So again, the Pollyanna in me also meets the realist in me, and in all of us. And so we see what the numbers are, but I still end. The song didn't play the way that I wanted it to play, but it's still one of my favorite songs when it talks about trouble don't last always. Again, not grammatically correct, I understand that, but when you are looking for the best and looking for a good outcome, I'm not worried about that at this point. It's the message, and it does not last always. And I thank you so much for your commitment to the college, your dedication, your just rolling up your sleeves and getting things done. I say this, I've said it before because it's true, and I say it publicly. I'm saying it in a venue where it's going to be videotaped. This is the best, very best college at which I've worked. Absolutely. Faculty, staff, students, I really do love working at Southwest Tennessee Community College. I appreciate everything that you're doing. Thank you for your comments and your feedback. Please keep them coming. Hang in there with us. We're doing everything we can to make sure that Southwest remains a vital part of the community. We're doing everything we can on your behalf as well. I know we like to get into that us versus them. I've never bought into that, because I think while we're fighting each other, we're all going down sinking together. And that's energy better spent. How can we bring as many people forward with us as possible? How can we solve and resolve as many issues as possible? That's where I will devote my energy. I'm not going to devote it getting sidetracked. Sometimes people try to throw different things at you, questions or issues, just to kind of keep your eye off the ball. And I can't do that. We can't do that, because when you start over here fussing and fighting about this, then the whole college is going down. So I won't be diverted, won't be deterred. Nasty comments, you can keep them coming, and they'll just kind of bounce and go on, because the focus, it has to be on making sure that we are a strong institution, and that we continue to do what we were put here to do, and to make sure that we do no harm, and to as much as possible. That is never our intent. It is never a goal to see who we can hurt, who we can target. I won't tolerate that, and I don't have leaders like that. And if I found out that I had them, they wouldn't be here very long. Let me just tell you that, because we have big work to do. We have a community that needs us, and they will continue to need us after COVID. They even need us even more now. And so we need to be strong for them. So thank you so much. We've held you longer than we said we would. This is a very critical conversation, and we appreciate your participation. Any last comments, Cynthia?
Dr. Hall, I would like to, I'm going to give out my email address. If you have additional suggestions, questions, we're going to go through all the ones that are listed that we didn't answer. And we're going to, if your name is on them, we will email you a response. If you didn't put your name, you'll find them on the website as soon as we can get those answered. My email address for questions, comments, and then I'll sort them to the right people is cgraham and then the number 10 at Southwest. Now, I'm in that address book, Cynthia Graham, so you can look me up if you didn't get my email, but please reach out with questions, concerns, suggestions, and we will address them. Thanks.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Tracy, I see your comment, Tracy McLaughlin. I like that dedicated email. So I had said originally go to your respective VPs. Sometimes things get lost, and I don't want one idea to get lost in all the emails that they receive daily. So that's great. Thank you, Cynthia, for being the repository of information. I appreciate that. So if everyone, any ideas or whatever, send those to cgraham10 at southwest.tn.edu, and that way we'll get everything all in one area. And Cynthia does a great job of making sure we all get what we need and get information. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, VPs, for the work that you're doing. I appreciate you. I say that to you privately. I want to say that to you publicly. My senior leadership team, I want to give you your kudos because it's hard work and sometimes you don't get thanked, but I'm going to tell you, you deserve it. I appreciate you. I know what you do. I know what we all do. Thank you, faculty. Thank you, staff. Thank you, everyone. Our students. This has been a great program. It's been a necessary program. It's not been the festive occasion that I typically like, but it's been necessary. Until we meet again, be well, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you all.